Hey, welcome back. I'm Jim Cosmas with Snowball Industries. I'm bringing to you today a method in which you can determine how many calls per day you need based on a specific budget. So if you have a budget for your service division, if you have a budget for your replacement division, big ticket items, it's one thing to have a budget. It's another thing to say, well, how am I going to fulfill that budget? In other words, how many calls do I need per day in order to achieve a specific budget? So we've created a tool for that, and it's the daily call count service and replacement tool. So I will share my screen with you here, and we will go over kind of a mock scenario of what the tool looks like and how to achieve a specific budget. So I'll share my screen here with you in just a moment. And what you're looking at here is the daily call count service and replacement tool. And in this tool, you're going to see a bunch of criteria. Now, anything in blue, just like any one of our tools, anything in blue means that there is data required, okay? And here's a legend down here that tells you the blue is data required and the green is the summary of the data. So we're going to start off very simply. There's a drop-down menu here for the month. And let's just say we're going to go for the month of September. Then we'll say how many working days in this month. Now, here you have to take into consideration the 5-day work week, plus if you work on Saturdays. Now, if you work Saturdays, take that into consideration. If only half your crew works on Saturdays, then count the Saturdays at 50%. Or if 25% of your crew works on Saturdays, count them as 25%. We're going to say for this scenario, there are 25 working days. Now, this is broken down in sections. You have service and maintenance, and that is basically demand. In other words, I got a service call or I got a call for a maintenance. That has nothing to do with maintenance agreements, just service and maintenance. Budget is here. So what is your total service maintenance revenue budget for the month? Again, we're going to analyze September. What is the budget for this, for the service division for the month? So we'll say it's $152,000, okay? The call booking percentage, what is your current call booking percentage? So for every call that comes in, what do you book? How many do you currently book? And we will say that we are at an 82% call booking percentage. Now, don't get hung up on these percentages and the numbers I'm putting in. These are not to say that this is where you need to be. These are not KPIs. These are for the purposes of this exercise in this particular scenario. The average service ticket. Now, service ticket would be service, repairs, maintenance agreement, repairs. The average service ticket, how much is that? We will say the average service ticket is $249. The technician closing rate. When we talk about technician closing rate, we're talking about on a service call, on a maintenance call, when something is proposed for a repair, that is the closing rate. This has nothing to do with replacement. So if I go out, air conditioning's not work, a leaky faucet, no hot water, lights aren't on, and I propose a repair for these things, and I sell that repair, that is the closing rate. So we will say technician closing rate is 68%. Maximum calls per day per technician. How many calls per day per technician do you run? We'll say 4. Now, again, don't get hung up on these numbers. These are not KPIs. Although 4 is an actual KPI and is a good number, don't get so hung up on it. Then we're going to go to marketed replacements. Okay, so we want to know the replacement revenue budget for this month. What's the revenue budget for this month? We did one for service. Well, what's the revenue budget for replacements? We'll say $452,000. Revenue budget for the replacement division. Closing percentage on marketed replacements. In other words, for every marketed lead that we get, what's the closing percentage on that? And we'll say we're at 35%. The average sale on marketed replacements. Well, how much is the average sale on marketed replacements? We'll say it's $5,600. And the maximum appointments per day. In other words, the maximum appointments a salesperson will be scheduled per day. We'll say 3. Now we're going to look at turnover replacements. And turnovers are if we have a technician that went out on a service call or a maintenance call and they turned it into a replacement opportunity, big ticket replacement opportunity. So I went out, something's broken, and we turned it into a replacement opportunity. What is the current technician turnover percentage? What is your current technician turnover percentage? We'll say it's 9%. What is the closing percentage on those turnover replacement leads? So what is your salesperson closing percentage on those turnover replacement leads? We'll say it's 72%. And the average sale on those turnover replacement leads. It's the average sale. We'll say it's $7,400. Okay. Again, these are fictitious numbers. They are not to say that this is where you need to be. This is just for this particular exercise. There are a couple of more blue boxes that need to be filled out, and they're right here. And the first one is the percentage of replacement sales for marketed leads. So of your replacement sales, how many of them come from marketed leads? What's the percentage? We'll say that 40% of them come from marketed leads. Well, that would just say that the rest come from tech turnover leads or existing customer leads, let's just say, or tech turnover. So that would take us to 60%. Okay, 40% come from marketed leads, 60% come from tech turnover leads. So again, you're going to need some criteria in order to fill these fields out. So you need to have some historical data. You need to have some actual data. So even if you're creating a budget, right? We say, okay, well, this is my budget for the month. How am I going to get there? Now, how we're going to get there, we need to look at some historical data, and that's what we've done here. So you're going to pull that historical data, fill in the information, fill in the percentage of leads that come from marketed, percentage of leads that come from tech turnovers. And then here in the green boxes, we have the results. Here we're going to have a summary of all the calls that we need, and it breaks it down. So total monthly service and maintenance calls needed, total demand calls that we need. In other words, how many times does that phone need to ring? 1,095 times. If we're booking at 82%, we will actually book 1,010 calls, which means based on the amount of working days, we need 40 service maintenance calls per day. So that's our goal. If we're going to fulfill this budget and we close at 82%, and these are our closing rates, we need 40 calls per day, demand calls per day. Now, total monthly replacement calls needed. How many replacement calls do we need? These are marketed replacement calls. We need 112, again, based on some criteria that we put in there. The monthly replacement calls that will actually be booked, again, based on the call booking percentage. It's going to be 92. So we're going to get 112 times that phone will ring, 92 times we will book the calls, which means we need 4 calls per day in order to fulfill this replacement budget. We're also going to look at the actual turnover percentage needed. So this calculates the actual turnover percentage needed to fulfill a budget. It says, I need 5%. So we're currently at 9%. I only need 5%. So we're doing pretty good in this scenario. The daily technician turn, how many leads need to come from technician turnovers every day? Is 2. And then it gives you how many people do we need, total technicians needed to fulfill this budget and to fulfill all of this criteria. We need 10 service technicians, and then we will need 1 salesperson to fulfill the rest of the criteria. So here's where you can get a bit creative and say, well, how can I do this? I don't have 10 technicians, or I don't want to hire 10. I maybe have 8. So I don't want to hire 2 more, or I have 12. What do I need to do? And here's where you can get creative. You could say, well, if in order to fulfill this budget, what if my average ticket went from $249 to $329? Does it change how many technicians I need? How do you like that? It went from 10 technicians to 8, all by changing our average ticket. Okay. Now, don't change it random. It has to be achievable and in order for that to actually happen. But there you have the daily call count service and replacement tool. This will allow you to have a complete understanding of how many calls you need per day and how many people you need per day. This will help you in further developing your budget. This will help you in making sure your CSRs and your dispatchers understand exactly what they need to have per day in order to fulfill the budget. This will also help you understand and talk to your service technicians and your sales staff on what they need to do in order to fulfill the budget. Of course, if you have any questions or need some help with the daily call count service and replacement tool, feel free to give us a call here at Snowball Industries. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.